Very good evening, respected speakers and dear participants. Today, we are indeed privileged to have a very esteemed speaker for our today's session. And I am talking of the Dr. Kavita Raja. So, that's the only thing that can define her. She, I would say, is a celebrity teacher who is known to all of us, and most of us, when we write our papers, when we write our articles, she's the one whom we are quoting most of the times. May it be ethics, may it be geriatrics, may it be assistive technology. Uh, Ma'am is a professor and principal at JSS College of Physiotherapy in Mysore, or I should say Mysuru, and she is a teacher per se. She has more than 20 years of teaching experience, but she is also a researcher, and she has numerous publications in peer reviewed index journals. Amongst the few precious diamonds in our field who has done her PhD in physiotherapy, ma'am is a resource person for multiple workshops on rehabilitation all over India, and she is author of, as I said earlier, on various texts on assistive technology, ethics, and other components of physical rehabilitation. So, the topic role of exercises in healthy aging could not have been taken by anybody else except, as I said, the Kavita Raja. So I request ma'am to kindly take over the session for the session on role of exercises in healthy aging. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you for that flattering introduction. There is one other reason that it makes that I am suitable to take this class, because I am on the brink of aging. He forgot to mention that. But anyway, I hope I'm audible. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. All right. So we'll move on to the topic of role of exercises in healthy aging. I think all of you must be fairly familiar with this, because we've been talking about healthy aging and the need for physical activity for several years now. And it has been the topic of World Physiotherapy Day for the past couple of years. But we will discuss this again. So there are some myths that we all hear, right? When we tell patients that you need to exercise, they'll tell you, oh, I have been working, I work all my, I've not had a single day of rest in my life, etc., etc. And families are quite often, they tell you that they worked all their life, now is the time to rest. Now, this is not necessarily true. It might be the time to rest from gainful employment or from employment for money, but that does not mean you must be sedentary. So this, I think we know. Earlier in, before uh, the recent industrial revolution in India, most of, like when I was a child, the older members of my family were seldom sitting still. Okay, they might have been sitting still. They might not have been cooking or washing clothes, or those things would have been taken over by the younger generation. But they were still not inactive, in the sense they were engaged in religious activities which involved a lot of physical activity actually. So, for instance, they would do 110 pradakshinas, pratikriyas of karmas, or whatever you all call it, round and round the temple. Or if they were Christians, they would be going to church practically every day. And since there were no vehicles, or I mean, since everybody did not own a car, they very often walked to the temple or the church or the mosque, or as the case may be. And this was a very integral part of aging. And perhaps because of this, the lack of physical activity or the lack of exercise may not have been as evident then as it is now. Now there has been, a lot of other things that have taken over. Now the religiosity per se, or the active forms of religiosity, has pretty much um, evolved or taken on a different form now. You do not see many people actually going to temple or church or mosque daily and doing the physical aspects of religion or spirituality, not so much anymore. So what is taken over? One is yoga. So many people will tell you, I'm doing yoga. Yoga is exercise. Yoga, certain forms of yoga are definitely exercise, but certain forms of yoga may not be adequate as an alternative form of exercise. So these are some of the myths. And we also believe that if you are doing housework, now all of women will tell you, I do all the work at home. I don't need to exercise. No, that is not true. Because when you do work at home, you have the ability to stop. So you are not doing moderate to vigorous intensity of activity for 10 minutes at a time. We are not. Because we have control, we have the time to stop. If we are, and nobody now is grinding by hand, or nobody now is washing clothes by hand. So housework being mechanized also, there is a lot of difference in the activity. So these are some myths that practically every day we deal with in the clinic. So we have to tell them, they'll tell you, I don't need to do this, I don't need to walk, anyway I walk. But that walking and the walking that is beneficial to health are two different types of walking. Then there are other myths saying that once you get older, it's part of life to have aches and pains. It's part of life to have knee pain or back pain. That's also not true. It is not part of life. There are physiological changes with aging, but they need not take on the color of pathology. Physiological aging can remain as physiological and need not become something that is disease or disorder. So these are some of the myths that we often deal with. Now, what is healthy aging? The topic that was given to me is role of exercise in healthy aging. So what is healthy aging? Healthy aging, when we look at anything, disability, aging, when you look at anything now, it is always from a human rights point of view. So the human rights point of view of disability, for instance, is whatever the person with disability would like to do, if they're unable to do, or the person with impairment is able to do, would like to do, but is unable to do, then it becomes disability. And so also with aging. If it is acceptable to me that I will not, travel travel every month to a different state, then it as my retirement plan, that is okay. But if somebody else says, I want to travel, all my life I have worked, I would like to travel, I want to cover all the states in India, and then I want to go to neighboring countries. So if they're not able to do that, then it would become unhealthy aging. Whereas if they don't want to do that, then if they're able to do what they want to do, then it is healthy aging. So it's from a human rights perspective. So when you look at the WHO definition of healthy aging, it is the process of developing and maintaining the functional ability that enables well-being in older age. Please note that it says developing and maintaining. It is not just maintenance. Maintenance is required, but if you have new requirements as you age, you should be able to develop these requirements or functional ability. Like I said, if a lot of people would have worked all their life and they would want to start traveling, or they would want to play with their grandkids as they get older. So they may have to develop a new set of skills, or they may have to develop a new set of functional abilities. So if this is the process of healthy aging, if they're able to maintain that, or if they're able to achieve that, that is healthy aging as per the definition given by Beard et al., which has been adopted by World Health Organization. Even though there are many other definitions also, and some of them says that healthy aging would be absence of disease, or decreasing morbidity, or increasing length of life. There are various definitions. I've talked only about one. So there is generally a lack of consensus. And why is there a lack of consensus on the term healthy aging? Because health and aging are both very culture intensive. So what is health for India and what is aging in India might be very different from what is health and what is aging in, let us say, Scandinavia. Okay. So therefore, there is a lack of consensus. Depending on who is giving the definition, there will be there might be different aspects to this term. But however, everybody has agreed on the fact that there are certain factors that promote healthy aging. And when we talk about health, we are talking about physical health as well as mental health, mental and emotional health. So the definition of healthy aging, those factors that promote healthy aging, physically and mentally, there has been a lot of research that has gone into identifying these factors. Among these, there are certain non-modifiable factors and there are certain modifiable factors. So certain factors that are non-modifiable would be our genetic makeup or our race. So there are, certain, the longevity, how long I'm going to live is a little bit depending on my genes. So if I have the genes for longevity, I may live longer. And so if the definition talks about length of life, then this may have a factor. But there are certain modifiable factors, or factors that are within our control. These factors would be basically to reduce premature death. Now, what is premature death? Premature death naturally depends on the average life expectancy of the society that we're talking about. But in the current 21st century, all of us can aim to live well into our 70s, correct? At least. And a small proportion lives well into their 90s and even in the hundreds. Very few in the 100, but most of us, I mean, our life expectancy has more than doubled since independence. And so all of us can expect to live well into our 70s. So we would say premature death is anyone dying prior to that. And to prevent and minimize morbidity and disability, living is okay. I am alive does not mean I am living, right? I am alive means I'm still breathing. But living would mean healthy aging, health. So you have to be able to minimize the morbidities associated with the pathologies that can come with aging and the physiological changes that can come with aging, which can all lead pretty much to disability. And of course, the most important aspect is the life that you lead must be led with a feeling of well-being. So that is quality of life. So these are the things that we are basically trying to intervene in, so that the factors that help us to modify these aspects of healthy aging can be dealt with. So when we talk about healthy aging, there is it is health in pretty much. Health is composed of, I was muted, I don't know why. Am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, you are audible.
Health is composed of 6 interactive dynamic dimensions. Okay, so all of these are dynamic. Physical health can improve, can get better, it can get worse. Then emotional health can increase, can become better, or it can become worse. Social health, intellectual, spiritual, environmental. So these are the 6 dynamic dimensions which are all interacting. So these are the things that are considered to be health, part of the health. And these have often been referred to as the Rubik's Cube of wellness. All of you are familiar with the Rubik's Cube. As you keep turning any one dimension, it changes the colors on all the other dimensions. So likewise, any of these components, if you change, if physical health changes, it can affect the emotional, social, intellectual, spiritual, and environmental health, and so on. So if any of these dimensions are improved, then everything else can improve. If any of them become worse, then everything else can become worse. So hence it is called the Rubik's Cube of wellness, because each one of it can affect all other dimensions. Now, when we talk about these dimensions, what is physical health? Physical health, which is the one that we are mostly dealing with, is obviously cardiovascular fitness, flexibility and muscle strength, and endurance. So all of these are necessary. Why? Because mobility is one of the most important predictors of quality of life. Okay, the ability to move from place to place independently is an important aspect of quality of life, and hence the physical dimension is very, very important. So for you to be able to maintain mobility throughout your life, including prior to aging and after aging, you require several components, which are all of which are very familiar to you: flexibility, fitness, muscle, cardiovascular fitness, aerobic fitness, muscle strength, endurance. All of these are the aspects that we are always dealing with. So physical fitness is one of the pillars of healthy aging. So emotional fitness, emotional health deals with the feeling of satisfaction. Okay, you might be familiar with Maslow's pyramid of human wants, right? In Maslow's pyramid of human wants, what comes at the top of the pyramid? Self-actualization. Self-actualization is the point where you feel that you have met all your basic wants, and now you are ready, that you have within yourself a sense of well-being, which you can pass on to other people. That is self-actualization. That is the top of Maslow's pyramid of human needs. So by the time you are an elder, that is our definition, depending on the society we live in, is anywhere from 55 to 65. So by this time, what has happened is you have met all the lower levels of the pyramid. You have met your financial needs, you have home, you have family, you have your children most probably already grown, and so you have reached a point where all your basic needs are met and you have a feeling of well-being. So this level of stability, emotional stability, is necessary as a determinant of health. Coming to social health is, man is a social animal and we cannot live in isolation. We cannot operate in isolation. And so this is a social well-being is the ability to share companionship, communicate, mutual obligations with others, basically have a social interaction with other people. So if a senior person is living alone and is isolated and lonely, and if it affects their social well-being, it can affect their physical well-being, it can affect their intellectual well-being, it can affect emotional well-being. You can go into depression. You will become less active. You are likely to start forgetting things because there is no stimulation to keep up your intellectual or cognitive skills. So these are socialization is another determinant of healthy aging. So these are factors I want you all to remember, because these are factors that we need to think about when we are doing any sort of exercise program. If you're doing an exercise program for one individual all by themselves, it is not going to affect all the six sides of the Rubik's Cube. So you must realize it. You must keep this in mind. Then another determinant of healthy aging would be intellectual ability. That is the ability to process information, new information. So the information that we already have, for instance, when I was growing up, there was no internet. Actually, there was no TV even. But now, people my age and people older than me, okay, people who have already reached the sweet 60s, so to speak, are dealing with technology on an everyday basis. They are using mobile phones for payment. They are using internet. They're using WhatsApp. So this is the ability to process information that is not long-term memory, to clarify values and beliefs and make decision and have the decision-making capabilities. So these are very important for quality of life. So the ability to process information, to feel like you are part of the rest of the world, is very important. So this ability, this intellectual ability, and the ability to make decisions for your life, okay, on your life, on the on the lives of others that are close to you, etc., is another is a feeling of empowerment. So this is also important as a healthy as an aging determinant. So this is also important for you to remember if you're doing exercise prescription for older adults. Do not take away their decision making capacity from them. Do not make the decision. Involve them in decision making. It must be collaborative decision making. If you make them dependent, if you make them feel that they have to do what you are telling them, it is going to decrease their sense of empowerment, in their intellectual determinant of healthy aging. So it is also impacting on their human rights, of course. So another aspect of the intellectual determinant is the ability to be creative. The creative in order to stimulate the intellect. So this creativity depends on different people. Some people may like to write. Some people may like to tell stories. That's on the individual person. But for them to be able to be creative, you require socialization. So now you understand how all of these are affecting one another. The Rubik's Cube example. So why this has been, why the determinants of health have been compared to a Rubik's Cube. Spiritual is a relationship, not necessarily religion. Spirituality and religiosity are two different things. Religiosity may be a part of spirituality, but all spirituality need not have things to do with God. So the relationship to other living things, compassion, understanding. So all of these can also be spirituality. Deep understanding of the meaning of life is significant, so as a core of wellness. So that is another very important aspect of healthy living. So if you continue to be selfish and non-caring, that may affect other aspects of your health. Environmental, you must all be familiar with ICF. So in ICF, you have the contextual factors, right? The personal and environmental factors. This is almost like that. So the environmental factors are access to health, as access to transportation, availability of care, whether they have finances, whether they have education, whether they understand their health requirements, and the personal aspects, whether also the atmosphere, if they have access to clean water and health and clean water and air, and all of these things are also determinants of healthy aging. Not necessarily directly, not in the fact that if they don't drink clean water they will get sick, but in a general way also. So these are the determinants of health. So now since the modifiable factor within the control of us as physiotherapists is the physical component. So that is why the exercise, that is why I have spoken all this. The physical activity or the exercise can affect all the aspects of health. So it can have a positive impact on the Rubik's Cube. So therefore, this is an important and a modifiable factor for healthy aging. So the evidence supporting exercise or physical activity is immense. There are a large number of systematic reviews, Cochrane reviews, all of them are reaching the same conclusion that physical activity and exercise are required. Now, physical activity and exercise, if you compare, exercise obviously has higher levels of evidence. Why? Because exercise is normally in a controlled fashion. Physical activity, on the other hand, may be more recreational or maybe less quantifiable. So since exercise is more formal and quantifiable, this has a higher level of evidence. So engaging in some of the evidence that we have is engaging in a physically active lifestyle increases the likelihood of men aged 65 to 83 to remain alive and free of morbidities after 10 to 12, 13 years of follow-up for almost a half, 1.6 times. So almost double the likelihood, the odds are almost twice that they will remain free of impairments. So physically active lifestyle for people 65 to 83. So that is a that is a big level. So that is coming from early elders, young adults, young elders to middle elders also. Then the odds of healthy aging for people who engage in vigorous physical activity during the middle life, before you become older, the midlife is now considered to be anywhere from 50 to 65, were double. So the odds of health of people maintaining their determinants of health. So when I say healthy aging, it means the 6 determinants of life of healthy aging are being maintained. So for them to be able to maintain that is almost double if you have a healthy lifestyle in your middle years. Elders who do regular exercise can improve the odds of healthy survival by 30% more than those who do not. And people that did moderate or vigorous activity were 3 times or 4 times likely to be healthy agers. And there are numerous studies that support this, this finding. So if they do moderate activity regularly, regular moderate activity, elders are more likely to survive with fewer morbidities. I mean, all of us have to die. That part is not something that we can control. But the life that we lead until we die and the age at which we die are what we are considering as modifiable factors. Physical activity, this you will all know, is obviously associated strongly with reduction in obesity, in weight gain, in coronary artery disease, type 2 diabetes, and even dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So physical activity, in addition to mental activity, or physical activity alone, has shown positive impact on many types of dementia, including Alzheimer's to a certain extent. In addition, physical activity has also been consistently linked to decreased mortality rates and late survival. So those who are physically active are likely to live longer. So having said, I mean, this is the evidence that supports exercise in adults who are approaching or who are already in the geriatric age group, that is whom we call elders. So what are the guidelines? Now, how do you tell them to be active? Do you just tell them you have to be active? Now, what is the meaning of being active? It can mean different things to different people. So if you have had a very a lifestyle where you have played tennis 6 days a week for 2 hours a day, then your staying active would have something to do with that. Whereas if there's someone who is always, who has been pottering around the garden the whole day, not lifting or not doing any great physical activity, but always, plucking out leaves or dead flowers or whatever, that would be considered active for them. So what is this activity that we are telling our patients to do? We can't just tell them be active, because then all of them will say I'm being active, and this activity may not be what is required for healthy aging. So that is where the guidelines come in. So in order to improve cardiorespiratory, muscular fitness, bone and functional health, reduce the risk of non-communicable diseases, depression and cognitive decline, older adults must do at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic physical activity 7 days a week, or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity aerobic physical activity in a week, or an equivalent combination of moderate and vigorous intensity activity. Okay, so these are the guidelines. Now, for a child, they have to play for 60 minutes a day. So what are the guidelines for children? So 60 minutes a day, 6 sevens are 42, 420 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity is what is recommended for children. In older adults, that decreases to about 150 minutes of moderate intensity or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity aerobic physical activity in a week. It is not 7 times a week. It is in a week. Okay. Or you can do a combination of 50 minutes of moderate activity and 75 minutes of vigorous activity or such things. So out of this, aerobic activity should be performed in bouts of at least 10 minutes for it to have any sort of effect. So if you do any aerobic activity, normally we say it is 20 minutes, right? For an activity to be considered as aerobic activity, you need to keep it up for 20 minutes. But about 10 minutes of vigorous intensity aerobic kind of activity, that is walking, jogging, running, swimming. So it must be at least in 10 minutes duration. So these 10 minutes can be added up to 75 minutes of vigorous activity or 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity. Additionally, for if they require, but this is just to maintain. Okay, this is just to maintain their current level of functioning and to prevent deterioration. If you want to improve your health, then they must do at least 2 times this these guidelines. So that is what the guidelines say. That is for people who may not have any disease. So this is just you have become older, but you don't have any disease. You are otherwise healthy. You are a healthy, fairly healthy, active adult. That those recommendations are for them. But if there are older adults who have poor mobility, either because of pain or because of obesity or because of just reduced range of motion because of a sedentary lifestyle, whatever it is. So if they have poor mobility, they should perform physical activity to enhance balance and prevent falls. So if they have poor mobility, they're at higher risk for falls. So this I'm sure is known. So there must be specific, in addition to the 150 minutes of moderate intensity or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity, these people must also do specific exercises to enhance balance and for fall prevention for 3 or more days per week, at least minimum of 3 days per week. So this should include muscle strengthening exercises involving the major muscle groups throughout the body, and it must be done on 2 or more days of a week. So muscle strengthening exercises, not endurance, strengthening exercises must be done at least 2 times a week. Balance and fall prevention activities must be done 3 times a week, in addition to 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity aerobic activity. So if an older adult, for whatever reason, because of morbidities, cannot do these recommended amounts of activity, then they should do whatever they can to the extent possible. So if they cannot do 150 minutes, if they can do 50 minutes, that's also good enough to prevent further deterioration in health. So they must do whatever they can. So these are the global recommendations for physical activity for health that have been published. So these previous guidelines that I told you are also relevant for people with chronic non-communicable diseases, that is diabetes, hypertension, cardiac illness, etc., liver disease, kidney disease, and it is applicable for all adults irrespective of gender, race, ethnicity. Okay, so Indians also require the same thing, minimum. What we're talking about is minimum. So those who have specific health conditions would have to take extra precautions. So people with specific health precautions should do their exercises under supervision, or the exercise testing and prescription must be done under supervision and with the input of a medical practitioner to ensure that the recommended guidelines are adequate for them, or they may require more, and what are the safety precautions that they may require to take. So like I told you, you can accumulate this 150 minutes per week, but only activities done for at least 10 minutes of duration will be counted towards this accumulation. So if you do 5 minutes, and that is of no use, that would just a waste of time. So you must do at least 10 minutes each time, and it can be spread out and accumulated over the period of a week. So these recommendations are also applicable for older adults with disabilities. However, safety precautions must be taken. So disabilities including CVA, TBI, Parkinson's disease, whatever it is. Multi-component physical exercises. Now, when there is a variation in physical exercises, it affects, it improves the overall health, because they are addressing different aspects of the motor system. They may be addressing agility, they may be addressing, balance, they may be addressing different muscle groups and different joints. And hence multi-component activities are good, and they also help to reduce the risk of injury from falls. Exercises can potentially be done at home, or it can be done in a community setting as part of a structured program. So the structured program must have a combination of balance, muscle strengthening, and aerobic physical activity, and they must include gait, coordination, and physical functioning. Keep remembering, whether it is done at home or in the community will be decided based on the other determinants of health: the spiritual, the social, the environmental, and so on. Recreational activities that involve a lot of physical activity, like yoga, certain types of yoga, not pranayama alone, yoga, dancing, tai chi, intense or strenuous gardening and sports can be considered as multi-component physical activity, but it may not be, playing badminton alone may not be adequate. So you must make sure that the 10 minutes of accumulation, the 10 minutes and the accumulation of 150 minutes can be attained by whatever activities they are undertaking. Older adults, now you will know from the physiological effects of aging that muscles and tendons become less elastic as you grow older. So the potential for injury when you suddenly start doing strengthening exercises or even aerobic exercises are much higher. So older adults must include stretching and balance activities as part of their weekly physical activity. So these are some of the guidelines. Now, how do you assess the intensity? Because a lot of the time your patients are you may not be able to do, your patients may be in the community, you may not be able to do your exercise testing, lab testing, treadmill testing, you may not be able to do all that. VO2 max, you may not be able to do. So how can you assess intensity? You can assess intensity using a 10-point VAS scale. So on a 10-point scale, where just sitting still is 0, and working as hard as they can is 10, as strenuously as they can. Moderate intensity will be about 5 or 6, just like your pain VAS, where moderate pain is 5 or 6. Likewise, moderate intensity is 5 or 6. So this moderate intensity will make the person breathe harder and the heart to beat faster. They'll be able to talk, but they will not be able to sing. Okay, this is how you will assess. They'll be able to talk, but they may not be able to carry a tune. Why? Because your breathing pattern has to change when you carry a tune. So that is a way of assessing. Vigorous intensity will be 7 or 8 on the same scale. And here the heart rate will be quite, they might be able to hear the heartbeat, and they'll be breathing, panting hard enough, and they may not be able to say more than a few words, may not be able to keep up a conversation. This is the walk and talk test that you know. So they may have to stop and talk. So that would be a vigorous intensity exercise. So 1 minute of vigorous intensity exercise is about 2 times moderate intensity. So this is roughly how you can assess the intensity, whether they're doing. So if you are counting moderate intensity and vigorous intensity and coming up to 150 minutes of moderate intensity, you need to know how much of it was moderate and how much of it was vigorous. So for that, you can use this sort of formula. So vigorous intensity will be twice the moderate intensity. So besides aerobic, you need strengthening exercises, because again, you know, there is sarcopenia as you grow older and the muscles become weaker, and it becomes, the muscle size becomes smaller, and it becomes replaced by fat. So to gain health benefits, this is basic ACSM guidelines. You need to do 8 to 12 repetitions per activity, calculated as 65% of estimated 1 RM. So estimated 1 RM is what you can take from the standard estimations that are available. And if they cannot do 65% of 1 RM, 8 repetitions, then they can do 40% of 1 RM and do 2 or 3 sets. 65% of 1 RM, they need to do only 1 set of 8 to 10, 12 repetitions. But if they cannot do that, then increase the number of sets. That is one possibility. And when you do strengthening exercises, all major muscle groups must be worked. This includes the gastrosoleus, the quadriceps, the abductors, the hip muscles, the gluteus muscles, the back muscles, abdomen, chest, shoulders, and arms. The latissimus dorsi, serratus anterior, all the large muscles must be taken into consideration. All of them must be exercised. So your exercise routine can either involve all the major muscles of the lower body and all the major muscles of the upper body, or you can alternate. So some of the methods for strength training includes lifting weights, working with resistance bands, TheraBands, using body weight for resistance. This will often be difficult for older people, especially if they have degenerative joint disease. So you may want to do something that is non-weight bearing to start with before you start with weight bearing exercises. Then heavy gardening and some forms of yoga, like Surya Namaskar is a strengthening exercise. Now, what is happening in India? As a race, we are not physically active except for religious reasons, right? If you want to go to a temple, I think we will climb 1,000 steps, but otherwise we are not generally very physically active by nature. And with modern technology and comforts, we become even less physically active. And aging is not correlated with chronological age. Your body may age faster or slower. So some people who are 40 may look 70, and some people who are 70 may look 40. So this aging is one of the things, the visible signs of aging is also related to physical activity. So the number of lifestyle diseases which can be minimized or controlled by physical activity are many, including, like I already told you, diabetes, liver disease, kidney disease, heart disease, cardiac disease. COPD can be controlled, then obesity, weight gain, so many things, Alzheimer's, cognitive decline. So, and India has the dubious distinction of being the capital of most of these diseases. That is because of our sheer population, but whatever it is. So this is what we see, right? Most of our older people we see sitting and talking. So this is not helping us to age healthily. So giving an exercise program in India is very unlikely to work. So I am sure that all of you have, at least many of you have tried and failed. You try to tell your grandmother to do exercises, she'll laugh in your face. And so also with everybody else. So giving an exercise program is almost, 80% unlikely to work. Supervised programs are therefore necessary. This is not only for adults, for older adults, it is even for us. See, even I am a physiotherapist. I know all this. I lecture on this day in and day out. But how much exercise do I do? Almost, 5 days in a week, I forget. And there's nothing to forget because I have a gym I'm working in a physiotherapy department where the multi-gym is sitting right in front of me. But I say I forget. So this becomes difficult. So supervised formal programs are necessary. Otherwise, it is just simply not going to happen. And it needs to be done in a group so that you can motivate one another, or you can, there might be some spirit of competition, and there might also be the added benefit of socialization. So those are usually better. These can be on-site or it can be virtual. Tele-rehabilitation groups can also work, but usually it is better to have it as a group. Exercise progression and diversification is necessary for adherence. You cannot make older adults do the same exercise forever, because other muscle groups may become weaker, go into disuse atrophy, and certain muscles may become hypertrophied. And so when there is an imbalance between the two, it can lead to painful syndromes. So these are things you must take into consideration. So diversification is necessary, and exercise must be progressed. So especially strength training exercises must be progressed. So must aerobic exercises. So as your capacity increases, you have to keep progressing the exercises. Machine dependent exercises may have more acceptance in India because the people will see that something is being done, rather than if you tell them walk, then they will think, oh, I can walk, you know, why should I pay a physiotherapist when I am the one who is walking? So that may not work very well. But if you can show them a machine and say you need to do this, it might be, this my experience also, might be more likely to get adherence. Acceptance varies between urban and rural areas and between regions. Urban people may be more willing, more educated people may be more willing, and so on. And in India, very few centers are actually doing exercise regimens for mental health issues, because psychiatry is not something that we are deeply involved with, except in certain, you know, in a handful of situations of centers. So Alzheimer's dementia, there is evidence, not very high level of evidence, but there is evidence that it may be delayed or the disability decreased with physical activity. Depression, there is very strong evidence that physical activity helps. Schizophrenia, anxiety disorders, so many health issues that may plague the older adults can be helped with physical activity. A lot of it can be connected to the serotonin stimulation, the serotonin uptake in the brain, which increases because of physical activity. In pain syndromes, now older adults very often have pain syndromes, like knee pain, back pain. So they may have all these degenerative diseases. So in pain syndromes, exercises are evidence-based and electrotherapy is not. So exercises are necessary for us to do, but our patients may expect electrotherapy. So do the electrotherapy, but understand that that is not what is helping, and so also do the exercises. Exercises create a feeling of well-being. If you become addicted to exercises, then it becomes easier for adherence. And they must be individualized for preferred outcomes. One size does not fit all, because all older people will have their own particular problems or issues or strengths in hand, or their own particular goals. So like all other patients, even just basic exercises for fitness in elderly must be individualized, and the preferred outcomes must be done, preferably using the ICF format, taking into consideration the activity and participation more than the structure and function. So mobility and strength must go hand in hand. We cannot just keep on doing strength training exercises without ensuring that there is mobility. So what are the steps that you should undertake? You must evaluate your client individually and comprehensively. Take into consideration and keep in mind your Rubik's Cube of 6 determinants of health. Okay, using that, you must comprehensively evaluate, then plan a regimen, execute the regimen, preferably under supervision, preferably in a group, and definitely with the exercise progression and a clear plan. Analyze your effects, see if there are any negative effects, re-evaluate, plan, execute, and then maintain this exercise program with progression as necessary until you reach optimization, and then you can simply maintain the same level of exercise. These are the references that you might want to look at. As far back as 400 BC, Plato said that lack of activity destroys the good condition of every human being, while movement and methodical physical exercise save it and preserve it. So this is not something new. It is something that we have known for a long time. We just simply need to continue doing it. Thank you.
So much, ma'am, for talk, and yes, that's the reason why you are the speaker today, because of the age, but also because today is Teachers' Day, and we wanted none other than Kavita ma'am to speak today on role of exercise in healthy aging. So now I would like to request the audience, in case they have questions, ask our speaker, Kavita ma'am.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah, ma'am. This is Anushri from Pune.
right?
I would like to ask that in a situation like COVID now, the attribute that we were talking about, socialization, if that is compromised, do you feel that the health or the physical and the mental conditions will also get affected for the elderly?
Um, in the COVID situation, now I'll tell you what is actually happening in among the people that I know and among my patients. Okay, lot of my patients. See, we have a rehab center here, and we have people who were stopped from coming to rehab by their family because of the fear of COVID, because we're in a hospital, and they're coming back and telling us that they don't feel like eating, their sleep pattern is affected, that when can we come back, when can we come back. So we have no problem because we are following all precautions, and our center is not even part of the hospital. It is 100 meters away, but the family were stopping them from coming. That is what I'm talking about, empowerment. The older people should have the ability to decide their life just like you. Like if your parents tell you what to do and what not to do, you get irritated, right? It's the same thing with your grandparents. So yes, definitely it is going to affect them, because a lot of older people are also saying, anyway, we are going to die. If you're going to die with COVID, so be it, but why should we die unhappy? That is what actually it came on TV also. Some lady in UP or something said this loudly. I know, like you are restricting us, and do you want us to die of depression, or I'd rather die of COVID? This is something that came on. So it's probably true that it is affecting all the determinants of health.
Okay. Secondly, I would like to ask that if a person is not doing any form of exercise till he is into the old category, that means he is now retired and come to an old category, and if he wants to start with an exercise, do we still prescribe him the 20 minutes aerobic or the exercise protocol that you had discussed?
Yes, but yeah, because you are doing 65% of 1 RM. His 1 RM would be the strength training, right? So if he has not done anything, his 1 RM will be much less than his expected, whatever is going to happen after he is trained. So 65% of 1 RM is what ACSM tells you. But if you think that might be a potential for injury, you can go with 40% of 1 RM and do multiple sets. And the 20 minutes of aerobic activity does not change for anybody. It's always the same. It is walking and talking. So if you look at what I told you, it is self based. I mean, the intensity is not prescribed by us. The intensity is coming from the patient. If the patient can walk at a particular speed and talk and sing his favorite song, then you know that the intensity is moderate. But if we are saying walk at 5 kilometers an hour, that is where the safety issue falls, where you are considering the patient's performance as the baseline or as the assessment guideline. There is no safety issue, unless of course there is a morbidity, in which case before you do any exercise program, especially for someone who has been sedentary all their life, you must get a complete medical checkup by a physician who understands exercise physiology. Okay, MBBS students do not study exercise physiology. You must understand all these other minor problems in India. So they don't understand. And for, I don't know about Pune, but the rest of India, all doctors think that physiotherapy is IFT. So if they go and say that they're going for exercise, they either think we are doing passive movements or we are doing IFT. So they will not even know what we are doing. So it is necessary to communicate with the doctor and say why you want them to get a clear bill of health. This has happened for us. We had a patient who came with a medical certificate saying can do exercise and all, but we did not feel comfortable, and we sent him back, and he had 2 weeks later he went for CABG. So they are not looking at it. They are just doing stethoscope and saying, fit. So you have to be very clear about getting your medical clearance.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
We have been getting quite a lot of compliments. Dr. Rania say that wonderful insight. Thank you, ma'am. Narayan Bhamari, ma'am. A nice lecture, Gayatri. A wonderful session. Ricky Goradia, ma'am. Insightful webinar. And Anu ma'am says, thank you ma'am for the useful presentation. So along with these compliments, even I would like to take privilege to just add on that ma'am happens to be my doubt as well. Yeah. So yeah, are there any other questions from the audience?
Any other questions?
Yeah, we have a question at the chat box from Runali. Ma'am, can you give us information on importance of implementing functional training?
Okay, see, if you have a patient who has a mobility disability, then you would first of all evaluate them for the mobility impairment and then prescribe an exercise program. So prior to whatever guidelines I'm talking about is assuming that they have the basic levels of mobility. Now, if they do not have the basic mobility, or if they have functional problems, then yes, you would have to do the functional training and bring them back to some sort of baseline before you can do anything. That is why I am saying in older adults, it is always better to do supervised exercise. I know it is not feasible. They're not going to come because insurance does not pay for fitness, unfortunately. So in India, preventing disease is not covered by insurance. So until that happens, they're not going to come. But it is always safer to do it with after doing a complete comprehensive evaluation. So yes, you would have to do functional training first. That answer, Runali?
Yes, probably she cannot.
Ma'am, thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Do we have any other question from the audience? We have 4-5 minutes more.
I guess I said everything that needs to be said. There are no questions.
Perfect.
One last.
I wanted to ask assessment of intensity. Okay, mild, moderate, severe. Is there any reference to that? All the references are there in that bibliography. That is probably in that book, Physical Activity, this one. Physical Activity Guidelines for Americans. But WHO now says that there is no ethnic gender difference. It is all the same. So whether it is for Americans or Australians or Norwegians or Icelanders, we can still use it in India as guidelines. We would have to change the method of intervention probably, because our patients are not going to go horse riding, right? Like Queen Elizabeth does. So that's not going to happen. But the guidelines remain the same.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
That's it.
Thanks for your time and whatever knowledge you have shared with us.
Thank you.
And happy Teachers' Day. And
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
have a nice